Hi, I'm Bobby Albert, and today I'm sitting with Jeff Crilley, the CEO of Real News PR in Dallas, Texas, and with Zach Lewis. And I'm so glad to be here. And Jeff, would you mind just kind of telling us a little bit about what you do and how you got started?
Well, first of all, I'm thrilled to be on the show. Thank you so much for having me. I was a TV news reporter for 25 years and didn't know anything other than TV news. And I wrote a book in 2002 called Free Publicity. A TV reporter shares the secrets for getting covered on the news. I went around like a crazy man for 6 straight years, giving 300 speeches a year, sold 70,000 copies of this book, and a business was born because people kept saying, man, I can buy your little book, but I don't have time to do any of this stuff. Could I hire you? And then after hearing this so many times, Bobby, I just said, well, I'm 45. This is 2008. I'm not getting any younger. If I've got a second act, I better do it now. And so I launched Real News PR out of my home in 2008, and now we've got 17 employees and 50 clients, and I love my life.
Well, with you is all those years in being an anchor at the television station. What was one of your favorite stories that you think you came across?
Well, I'll tell you the funniest story I've ever covered is a story about a turkey that looked so much like Elvis that the turkey farmer could not slaughter it, and this is right after Thanksgiving. And so I ended up going to do this story on this man who believed that this turkey looked like Elvis. And when we got down there, it really looked nothing like Elvis. So it was about to be a disaster of a story. But the guy was so into it. I mean, he actually would hold up the wings of the bird and dance in the barnyard singing 1 for the money, and then the turkey would go, gobble, gobble, 2 for the show, gobble, 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 3 to get ready, now go cat go. So, and he was so into it. The story ended up going global. It was on CNN, Fox News Channel. Everybody saw this, and I would get people coming up to me years later in the grocery store saying, my favorite story you ever did, Jeff Crilley, was that guy who thought his turkey looked like Elvis.
See, he's very fortunate he had a whole song and dance to go along with it because the turkey looked nothing like Elvis, and that would have translated terribly to television. And one of the things I wanted to ask, Jeff, is why'd you want to get into TV, of all things? I mean, most kids want to be a firefighter, an astronaut. What made you want to be a reporter?
So career day in high school, you remember that, where you had, the architect and the doctor and the lawyer come in. Well, the TV news reporter was the guy that everybody, all my classmates, wanted to hear. There was actually 2 classes that were overflowing. It was the TV news guy and the funeral director. And not that anybody wanted to be the funeral director, but we all wanted to ask gross questions. So after we had our interests satisfied about the funeral and embalming business, we all migrated to the TV guy, and I looked at him and said, wow, he's locally famous in Detroit, and so you don't need to go to Hollywood to become famous. You can be famous locally on the news. It's kind of like the movie Anchorman with Will Ferrell. It's like, yeah, you can be important. And so I probably got into journalism for the wrong reason. I thought, man, I'm going to be famous. I'm going to be a star. But then I grew to really love journalism and the storytelling process and helping put a spotlight on people and taking their life, whatever their story was, and condensing it down into 1 minute and 30 seconds for the news that night. And you do that over and over again for 25 years, you get pretty good at telling people's stories.
Jeff, I've known you, it's getting close to a year now, and my interaction with your people have been just absolutely wonderful.
Thank you.
It's been a great experience. What in your at Real News PR? What would you say would be one of your something that you've accomplished that you're really proud of?
I love our culture. I like to say that we're a thank God it's Monday company, and I don't know that we've got employees in the room here, but I think they would agree that it's a happy place. I mean, I like to. It makes me smile to hear people laughing. The other day I was going into social media, and some of the young ladies in social media were singing, and that makes me happy. It's like, wow, this is like a work family, and we all care for each other. And I'm not going to take credit for that. I think that came from the right combination of people coming together. But I also am fairly intentional about not micromanaging, just hiring people to be good and letting them be good. So, like, to praise Zach here, I'm constantly amazed at the wonderful things that he's producing. I'm not able to hear everything he does, but sometimes I'm bringing somebody through and we're giving a tour, and I'll say, hey, Zach, play something. And then you'll do it, and I'll be like, we did that? That's awesome. I didn't know we could do that.
You know, Jeff's very modest. He definitely shares a wall with the studio. I'm sure he hears a lot more than he's letting on. Jeff, I wanted to dial back a minute and talk about kind of your journey from Detroit, like you said earlier, to the Lone Star State. You've made quite the leap. You didn't just start here in Texas and come up in Dallas. You've moved around a bit. You made it to Detroit, of course, where you started. You were in Minneapolis at one point. You were in Omaha, I think, Texas. How do you make it from there to here and end up starting your own company? Now, it's a big question, but I mean, let's start small. Just how did that journey happen?
I think great question. I think television news teaches you to be flexible. I mean, gosh, there were days at Channel 4, my last stop, where they would change my story 7 times in the same day. They would just keep changing it. No, don't go to Arlington. Now you're going to DeSoto on a completely different story. So you learn to kind of rock and roll and be flexible. And starting over in a new market was always exciting to me. So, my first market was Lansing, Michigan, and then I went to Omaha, and I had to learn a lot about agriculture, and I had to prove myself all over again. And then I got the job in Minneapolis, and nobody knew me in Minneapolis, so I get to start all over and build a reputation and move to Dallas. And when I moved to Dallas, I just said, this is it. I don't aspire to go to New York or Chicago. I'm going to make my home in Dallas. And at the time, I thought to myself, I'm going to be the Chip Moody or, the main anchorman at the #1 station in Dallas, and that'll be my thing. And then, we get to the top of the little mountain we're climbing, and I was getting to the top of the little mountain called local TV news, and I looked around and I said, is this it? Is this all there is for me? So that's when I reinvented myself one more time and said, let's do this PR firm thing and see what it would be like to be your own boss. And it was exciting and terrifying all at the same time. I remember when I was putting in my letter of resignation, I had written it up, and my finger was hovering over the send button, because 25 years is a long time to do just one thing. And I knew if I pressed send, I'm not going to take it back. If I press that button, this is it. I'm closing this chapter and starting another one. And my finger hovered, and then I pressed send, and I was absolutely terrified and exhilarated at the same time. And I said, well, this is it. Nobody's going to, put food on your table but you. If you don't go out there and make this thing work, this will be a miserable failure. And I have no intention of failing. And so I'm a big Rocky the movie fan, Eye of the Tiger. I'm like, that's it. I got 40 hours back to myself. Let's see how good this can be.
Jeff, you mentioned about you're not a failure, but I think you would admit that we do have failures in our lives, but the biggest thing is what did we learn from them? Do you mind sharing something that you failed at, and what did you learn from that?
In the early days of running this company, I was partnering with some other journalists. I've always been kind of the sole owner of the company, but I was partnering with other journalists, and I learned that not everybody who was a journalist can do public relations. And so the original model for the company didn't work. But I think what I did from that was I came back with resilience, and I said, okay, well, that sounded better on paper than it was in real life. Let me try another way. And I think that, sometimes the house has to burn down 5 times and just keep building it back. And
Yeah.
every time you build it back, you've learned something. And I think one of the biggest things that I've learned is it is the people. It's all about the people. And when you get the right group of people, you just want to keep them happy. You want to keep them motivated. You want to keep them in place. And so I feel like the best thing that I can possibly do to lead this company is be the visionary, the master strategist, the head cheerleader, but not the micromanager, not the guy who says, what are you doing and how long are you spending doing it? And I think that breeds confidence. And, Zach and I, we had a little pep talk a couple months ago, and I said, Zach, this is your division. This podcast division is your division. I'm not going to tell you how to run it. This is a blank sheet of paper. Build your dream division. And I think it inspired you, and you went off and you started to innovate, and you started to bring things into the podcast division that I wouldn't have come up with. And I think part of that, to answer your question, is if you give employees the range to invent and come up with new and fresh ideas, often they're coming up with ideas that the visionary, the CEO, would never have come up with.
Yeah, I've seen that often in many CEOs of businesses. And, Zach, was asking you earlier about how did you get to Texas and starting back, in your earlier days. Was there a person that really inspired you, that was a mentor to you of any nature? And can you help us kind of paint a picture of what that person, how they helped you?
I think it's my dad. So
Wow.
my dad was a minister in downtown Detroit, and I don't remember a day when I didn't hear the coffee going downstairs, and my father, at work at, I think he was, getting up at 5:30 in the morning to start his day, and then he would go to work, and then he would get home around 9 because he had meetings at the church. And so that kind of work ethic of, you're the minister of this large congregation in downtown Detroit, and nobody's going to make it happen other than you. So even today, like this morning, I got up at 4. I like to think that I'm the hardest worker in the company, and I'm leading by example. I mean, by noon, I've already worked an 8-hour day, and if the boss isn't willing to put in the hard work, then why would the employees?
And one of the things that stands out to me, at least working here at Real News PR, is the amount of millennials on staff, which is a weird thing for a lot of people that come in because they see a bunch of millennials and they think, okay, what's going on here? And I think the reason so many of us are able to work here is not only because you're willing to take a chance on us, but because of your upbringing in news, because of being flexible and understanding, look, sometimes even great things can come from small beginnings. And I think that's kind of how you got started, starting at the bottom and working your way up to the top. And now being the head of a company, your own company, reflecting on that, do you have any, what do you think? Is there anything you would say to somebody who's maybe starting at the bottom and working their way up?
So I think one of the things TV news taught me was to be incredibly flexible. So like in the life of this company, we do have meetings, but we're not a company that, likes to sit down and put together this big, thick marketing book and and give it to the client and say, here's our marketing plan. Because, TV news, there wasn't a lot of time for plans. It was like, hey, there's a fire, at the airport, go. And I think what I brought to the company was this sense of, okay, let's be flexible, let's innovate, let's think on our feet. Now, how many times do I bring somebody, you're editing, and I'll bring somebody in and I'll say, hey, I'm sorry to bother you, Zach. Can you tell them about the podcast?
Oh, sure.
I'm sure that's probably somewhat annoying to you because you're in the middle of you're in the middle of a project. But it's an important function for you to show off this division, and you do such a good job, and you're very, very flexible, and you're able to read the client or prospective client and adapt to it. And I think that flexibility and the ability for all of us to kind of think on our feet makes this a very nimble company.
You brought up about, I heard you say flexibility several times, and I've seen that. And I think your people do very, very well at flexibility and the creativity and the innovation that comes through and always open to change. And, you know, not too many organizations are they able to instill their people to enjoy change in the organization. What do you think has been special with your culture here that people feel very comfortable with change? You know, many people don't feel comfortable with change.
Right. Well, I think I've assembled the right team. We call ourselves a SWAT team. I say to prospective clients, hey, if you want the mall cops, there's a whole bunch of PR firms that are more mall cops. We're the SWAT team. If you want to get on the news, we're going to get you on the news. We'll kick in the door, we'll climb down the chimney, we'll break out the glass, we'll get you on the news. And I've assembled this little dream team of young, motivated millennials who really want to create and innovate. And so in building the company, I haven't hung out around a lot of PR firms. I really don't know what the industry does largely, and that's good because I think it's caused us to go into this industry with a fresh pair of eyes. What's the customer's experience? So I'll get on my little soapbox if you'll allow me, Bobby. One of the things I really believe in is excellence. What is the customer's experience working with us? And so a message that the employees have heard over and over again is, how do they feel when they work with us? And I'll tell you a quick little story to illustrate this. We had a client who needed to take a break. He was with us for about 6 months. And he said, hey, Jeff, can I meet with you on Tuesday? And I said, sure. So he comes in, and I could tell he hadn't slept. He was all worked up. And so we went into the conference room, and I said, well, what's going on? And he says, I just don't know how to tell you guys this. And I said, what's that? He says, I need to take a break. And I lost sleep last night, and I just didn't know how to break it to you because you guys are family. And I got up and I gave him a big hug. And I said, man, that is probably the sweetest, kindest compliment you could ever pay a PR firm, is that you lost sleep when you had to take a break with them. And to me, that was the ultimate compliment of how he felt, how we made him feel about his PR firm. And hopefully we're doing that with you, Bobby. Is on everybody's calendar today, just so you know, it's big circle. This is Bobby Albert Day. This is everybody in the company knew that
that's a real thing.
Thursday is Bobby Albert Day.
Yes.
Because we were all going to pretty much clear away everything to focus in on you. And I hope you feel the love.
Well, it's been a great experience today, even though I've experienced the love many times before. I'm really fascinated with you, since you mentioned about flexibility, and I see that. Even with flexibility, there's probably still some habits or disciplines, not only maybe if you mind sharing in your own personal life, but how you run your company here.
So there's a great book called The Power of Habit. And in this book, he talks about how you can have good habits and you can have bad habits. So if you have bad habits, if you're eating candy all the time, you'll gain weight. If you have good habits like getting out and working out, you get a better body.
Yeah, I think I've already gained 5 pounds since I've been here.
Yeah, I am the candy man here at the PR firm.
Welcome to the studio, Bobby. We're happy to have you.
Yeah.
But one of the habits that I developed 9 years ago was I get up every morning. 4 is usual, 5 is sleeping in, and I put together an email that goes out to 28,000 journalists across the country. And I've done it every single day for 9 years. I haven't missed a Christmas Day, New Year's Day, and being able to do that allows clients to get on the news. And by making that commitment and doing it over and over again, I think we've grown much faster than we could have if I hadn't developed that power of habit. And I think if I can, I know you're the interviewer, but when you built and sold a fabulous company, what was your power of habit? What did you do consistently?
Well, and that is a very good question. And going back to when I was a little boy, I've always been an early riser. Now, my dad was too. And my dad had a great influence on my thinking and the way I lived my life. I know this may sound crazy, but even when I was, a young boy before even going to college, I'd study hard, and I'd even wake up in the mornings to finish studying or to prepare for a test. Even though I prepared the night before, I let my mind rest a little bit, and I went back. So I've been an early riser, and I know this. It is interesting you say you've been up since 4. Well, my habit is I get up at 4:30 every morning. Now I have to go to bed early to get up at that time, but my daily habit is that getting up early. I usually eat a very good, healthy breakfast. Then I have my quiet time, and I do a lot of stretching, and then I exercise. I work out 6 days a week and have now for 35 years.
That's awesome.
And and then I go to work, and I'm always been just thrilled to get in there, and I do a lot of bicycling. I've bicycled about 100,000 miles, but also I used to run, but now I go on very long walks, 4, 5, 6, 8 miles. And I also picked back up something I did for many years is lap swimming, and I've been doing that
That's
again.
great.
So that's kind of my daily habit. But like I said, I have to go to bed early.
Me too.
I know there's some people in your organization. They're not people.
Yeah.
Because I'll get an email at 1:15 in the morning or something.
That's Chris.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
We
Yeah.
call him a vampire. He stays up at night.
Yeah.
We have a member of the staff who's not above sending emails at 3 a.m. to get work done. He's a hard worker. Credit where it's due. Hey,
Yeah.
somebody's got to be there.
Yeah. Well, he told me today that he went to bed at 4. So
A.M.? My God.
Yeah. See, I mean, that's about
is
the time
true.
I'm getting
Right,
up.
yeah, that's about 4 p.m.
We could have probably high-fived each other,
Right.
on the way.
On the way in and out of the salt mine.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah. Jeff, I know if you're able to put out a newsletter, daily newsletter, you have to read, you have to listen, you have to view, I'm sure because of your background, view a lot of television. Is there something that you really look forward to consistently follow, or something that you're reading that helps you develop some of those things?
So that the daily email that I put out is like my crossword puzzle, and I think if you did a crossword puzzle every single day for 9 years, you have a large vocabulary. And this, in order to put together my daily email, I have to really consume hundreds of articles, and I have the TV going on in the background and listening to what the news stories are, so I can put out fresh content. But that. I'm looking at the major news sources like the network news channels, USA Today, Reuters, AP. I'm looking at kind of the normal news places to find my stories, and it helps me in all aspects of my life. So if I meet somebody at a cocktail party and I say, "What do you do for a living?" He says, "I'm a podiatrist." I instantly think, okay, where have I seen that before? Oh, podiatrist. Do you see patients who have high heel pain? I understand that more women are suffering high heel pain because of, those high heels that they wear. And they're like, "I'm glad you asked me that. Of course I am." And so it's made me very smart from a standpoint of being able to see somebody's role in the news and get them on the news as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I like what you're saying there, because we in business we have to drive for results. That's what we're in business for. But keeping up with maybe current events and things opens so many doors for. I've seen it in my own life. In enhancing relationships with people, because you can carry on a conversation just about with anybody.
Absolutely.
I know we've been talking a lot about some really hard work. I can tell you're a real hard worker. What? Share with us a little bit. What do you do for fun?
Or do for fun. I am.
Except give me a hard time, you know. So.
I'm crazy in love with my wife. We've been married for 16 years and just celebrated our anniversary, and we're best friends. And we, tonight I'm looking forward to taking my bride out to dinner and having a nice date night. Any free time I have, I spend with Victoria, and she's wonderful. She's the love of my life. She too was a TV reporter. She did a bunch of radio stuff, and now she's in marketing. So life is wonderful that way. We're both helping tell stories.
You know, we all, our wives, my wife, I couldn't have done all the things I did without her, and raising our three boys, and because as our business grew, I had to travel a lot. And in fact, it's really fascinating that she, at our house, because I just didn't have the time anymore, she took care of the yard. She was the plumber. She was the electrician. We had like 28 trees in our yard, and when we had a storm, she was out there bringing people, you know, to get the trees back in order, you know, just on and on. But I think finally she got tired of it. Well, we even had a pool as well, and she was the pool man, you know.
Really?
So
that's so important.
But she enjoyed doing it, but I think it flat wore her out because it was just too much. But, you know, what could you, you know, to our audience, what maybe one or two advice would you give them as that you would like for them to hear today? So.
I think the most important thing is to do what you love, because if you do what you love, you'll never work another day in your life. You've heard that. I would encourage people to, especially the CEOs who are listening to this, do the things that give you joy, and then hire people to do the things that drain your joy. Because in order for the CEO to continue to play that role, they got to be happy. And I remember several years ago, when the company was young, I had the wrong group of people. I had hired the wrong group of people, and I was walking across this parking lot, and I looked up at the building, and I remember thinking to myself, I don't want to come to work today. And when I said that to myself, I was like, oh, it shocked me. I said, wait a minute, you're the CEO of the company, and you don't want to go to work. This is a sick company. The company's not well. And we ended up making some changes in the staff, and then the culture changed, and it became a happy place. But it was not always a happy place. And so you asked a question about what piece of advice. The CEO has got to love the company. The CEO has got to be the head cheerleader, the person who the employees can look to for confidence and leadership, and not somebody who's going to second guess them or beat them up for a decision that they made that might not have been the best one. I believe in teachable moments. You know, when somebody does something that, you know, well, let's talk about that. I think there's probably a better way we could have handled that. But
I think that's excellent advice, you know, to this our audience here, is that, you know, just like you said, you got to be the champion. You've got to have the right core values, especially, you know, holding up to integrity, and how well that you treat your people will have a big factor in them helping you, because they really want to help you be successful. We just got to let them do that, and it sounds like that's kind of culture that you have here. Could you maybe share with us a little bit of how to our audience how people can get a hold of you?
Oh, thank you. So our website is realnewspr.com, as opposed to fake news. People now say, "Man, you came up with a great title." I was like, "I came up with it 9 years ago." It was just kind of a happy accident that fake news became a thing. But it's realnewspr.com.
Well, Jeff, we're just thrilled that to have you as a guest here today.
Thank you.
And I know from personal experience that I'm talking about the word thrill. I am thrilled to be working with you and your people, and it's been a great experience for me.
Thank you. And right back at you.
Okay.
You're listening to RNCN, the digital destination for premium talk radio.